There he is.
I wanted to like get on a half decent mic for you too, so you're not getting like tons of room echo.
Oh, you're good. That's a solid mic.
Let
It's
me.
like, ooh, that's a professional mic when I hear it. So,
Well, it's always nice, like when you get a podcast going and you can like, y- there's more clarity with the
mere quality.
conversation.
Yeah. There's beauty in quality. You know what I mean? Like,
I even got my little light here,
you go.
so
See, mine's all messed. I just got my boob lamp up here, and then I got my leg lamp right here. So,
I love it, man. You're creating a comfortable atmosphere.
it's a vibe. It's weird because this podcast, like I just do it on my bed because that's where like my creative flow is. Because like I'll have my keyboards here, like my MIDI controller, and then I'll have my laptop. So if I'm feeling like, hey, I got an idea, like I'll just hook it all up and then do a thing.
Hey,
And
yeah, like everyone has that creative space where they're comfortable, where the ideas kind of come to life. So
yes,
hey, if that's your bedroom, a broom closet, whatever works.
recording vocals in a bedroom closet, man, that's classic right there.
I I do everything where I'm currently sitting. I know like the proper thing to do is probably to do it in a treated room,
Right.
but I kind of get away with it with my genre, I think.
It's fine because you do have like a vibe to it where it's kind of this sort of like lo-fi kind of experimental where it doesn't need to be polished if I'm being respectful in that sort of
Yeah,
aspect
you're not
where
hurting my feelings, yeah.
I love it because it really adds to that synth punk that kind of style to it where it's like I'm just doing this because there's a love to it. I'm feeling it right now, and I just need to get it out of me, kind of thing. Instead of being like, well, let's just try and kind of polish this up and see if we can, add this to. It's there's beauty in that sort of chaos. You know what I mean?
Are we going? Is this
Yeah,
is
I just kind of free flow. Yeah.
cool. All right. Yeah, well, okay, well, I'll piggyback off that. Yeah, I kind of tell people like my style is mid-fi, in the sense that it's not lo-fi like guided by voices where it sounds like I recorded it on a Fisher Price toy. I do spend a lot of times trying to get the mixes to sound good
Of course. Yeah.
and getting like mixing advice from people that I really respect. But I also, it's not uncommon for me to run my vocals through distortion pedals or
Yeah.
I love really trashy, just mangled, crushed drums and stuff. So, um, yeah, it's lo-fi in that sense where I love to just kind of mangle the original audio, but then I will really try to properly mix it and bring some professionals in to do the finishing touches with the mastering and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I get that. Let's talk about your upcoming album. It's the Synth Redo Volume 1.
Yeah.
Really excited about hearing. Tell me about that.
Did I send you the EPK with that yet? Because if
Yeah, you
okay.
did. Yeah, let me pull it up while you go ahead and talk.
I don't always have the best memory or I'm juggling a lot of activities
Hmm.
and I'm trying to get better at making lists and remembering who I sent stuff to.
No, you're good.
Okay, cool. Okay, yeah, so the synth redo basically I've made the album 4 or also known as IV and it was received really well. I got some good reviews and positive response when playing shows and stuff. Um, I primarily do stuff by myself when recording, and then when I play live, I have a really solid group of friends that help me pull it off live.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later. Yeah.
Yeah, however, they're not always available to play shows. A couple of those guys gig a lot with other people, and then um and then sometimes I'll just hop on something really last minute, or I might hop on a show at some place with like a small stage or something that only would hold 2 or 3 people. Like there's this really cool bar in Minneapolis called Palmer's, and I've seen a lot of awesome shows there, but the stage is like the size of a postage stamp.
That's
And
awesome.
it's part of the charm of seeing shows there, but it's really hard to fit more than 3 people up there. So I've played there a couple times with me and then this other character named Computer Man, who we'll get into in a few.
I
But
can't.
basically, Oh, I also like traveled a bit and hopped on some shows, like kind of last minute.
Yeah.
And I needed a way to perform in these circumstances where either the band's not available or it's in a really tight space or it's super last second. Okay.
Mhm.
And I know some people they'll just be like, hey, no problem. I'll grab an acoustic guitar. And I'm not throwing shade on that. I've know a lot of people who do that really well. I'm not one of those people, man. I just, I can't really pull off the acoustic thing very well. But I'm a huge fan of like Human League, Depeche Mode, some like Ronnie Martin stuff, and like I just thought it would be fun if instead of going up there with an acoustic guitar or using like a bunch of tracks with like pre-recorded guitars and stuff, I thought it would be fun to like tear the songs down and rebuild them using nothing but synths and drum machines,
Hmm.
and then perform them like a classic synth pop act.
Yeah, of course.
Um, if you see like old Kraftwerk videos or like Human League or just a lot of that Manchester stuff.
Mhm.
And then in more modern era, like Drab Majesty or Choir Boy, it's like just a couple people on stage, but they have the PA cranked and it's really kicking.
Oh yeah.
And I'm just like, I think I could pull that off. And also like a lot of my friends do hip hop and I've seen some friends of mine literally plug a phone in
Yeah.
and just own the room.
Yeah.
And I love messing with my synthesizers. So I rebuilt all the songs. This is long-winded, but so I could perform
Good.
solo sets or sets with like Zach or if one or two of the guys are available, right?
Of course.
So so I started performing some sets like that on occasion, and something really interesting happened. I started getting invited to play with more like synthwave acts. There's a great one from town called Night Audit. There's a great one from town called North Innsbruck. And they don't necessarily play with a lot of rock bands just because their setup is different. It requires a little bit different live mix. And a lot of times those guys will bring out like a huge video screen.
Yes.
And so I just realized it was giving me an opportunity to perform and for more different types of audiences. So why not, And then it's also just really fun sometimes to be free from the guitar because the stereotype is like a electronic live act. They're gonna like hit spacebar and they just sort of stand there and twiddle knobs. And
Yeah.
I'll get the tracks going, but I'm running around the room like just full on, like giving
Full.
it 110%.
Yeah.
I spend most of my time in the audience, engaging with the audience, and um, that's been really fun, just not being tied to a guitar and pedal board. So anyway, um, the label Steadfast, who put up my record, got wind of that, and they showed them the electronic tracks, and they're like, "Hey, we should put this out too."
Yes.
I was a little worried because typically like remix albums don't do so great. They're more of a novelty
Hmm.
sometimes. So I'm really trying to emphasize this is not a remix. It's not like I looped the chorus for 6 minutes and threw a dance beat under it.
It's a 12-inch single.
Yeah, and again, no shade on that. Like
Of
some
course not.
DJs and stuff are awesome at that,
Yeah.
but like that's just like not what I do. So I just straight up rebuilt the songs with drum machines and synths, and and I used more vocoders and stuff.
That's cool.
And kind of like leaned into really like honestly like my love for early Human League and some of the old Depeche Mode. And then there's a little bit of like a synthwave vibe to it too. And but I don't really tell people it's synthwave. I don't think that would be fair because that's such a specific subgenre. I just tell people it's punk,
Mhm.
but this time around it's just drum machines and synths instead of guitars. Um, anyway, if you liked the other record, I really want you to check this one out because I put a lot of work into it and it's super fun. It's just a different format. It's kind of like some band might put out the acoustic EP or whatever. Um, this is me just sort of giving you a new presentation on the material, and I really I really get to have a lot of fun with this with like the Moog.
Hmm.
Um, I should actually go. I gotta talk about the
Go ahead.
Moog.
No, go
That's
ahead. Go for it.
so. Why don't you entertain the audience while I go grab that?
Yeah, I'll
Because
go
I
ahead.
need to show it to you. Okay,
Oh,
one
you're
second.
good. Hey, everybody, this is sponsored by Arizona Tea. If you put your ear to it, you can actually hear Macintosh Plus or Young Lean to it. If you just listen a little bit. So I'm taking a quick swig of Vaporwave right here. Mm, Arizona Tea when you're trying to quit drinking soda. Yeah. So anyway, so I hope you guys are enjoying this. Um, if you have, oh, there he's come back. I was about to do a quick promotion. If you love synth punk, check this album out. I'm really excited about hearing it. And even if you listen to the synth redo, listen to all the other stuff because it's just, I mean, the discography is absolutely incredible. Okay, I'm done kissing your ass. Go ahead, buddy.
Thanks for the plug. Um, this instrument,
Yes.
so it's a Rogue.
Oh yeah.
It's got the red key.
Yep.
Um,
It's
I
so
just want to show
beautiful.
it off with the red key.
Yep.
It's really special to me. There's a really cool story behind this. I haven't
Yeah,
got
go ahead. Please do.
anyone yet. You're getting dibs on the story.
Exclusives. Thank you very much.
So I think I was 18 or 19 years old, and I bought that Moog for $100.
Ooh.
And they weren't really cool at the time. They were kind of thought of as like these weird ancient relics, but a few kind of gear nerd people liked them because of Stereolab and the rentals, okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Um, so I was a kid, I bought it for really cheap, and I was buying other just odds and ends. I didn't really know much about them. I played it a bunch for a while, and then I was living away from home, and I was just the super broke kid who was playing in bands and doing art, and I uh I ended up selling it because I just like needed to make rent.
Mm-hmm. I understand that.
And then, like it was always one of those regrets because it like honestly like that was the synth that like got me into analog
Mm-hmm.
stuff and like how to come up with my own patches and like it opened the door for me for all kinds of stuff. Um and I was too young to realize it at the time, but I always looked back at that and I'm just like really regretted it. Really regretted selling it. I sold it to someone in a local band. And then I kind of went back to him. I'm like, "Hey, do you still have that? Could I buy that back from you?" He's like, "I'm really sorry. I sold it." I'm like, "All right, that's cool."
Yeah.
Um, I when I bought it, it has that red key on it. So like when I bought it, it had this broken key. It had a little nub you could still play.
Yeah.
But anyway, that synth got sold and it made its way probably around the country.
Mm-hmm.
And then I was one time I was on tour and I was in LA and
Mm-hmm.
I noticed a Moog Rogue in my friend's closet who's a Minneapolis transplant. I'm like, "Oh, I used to have one of those. If you ever want to sell it, let me know." And he's just like, "Yeah, I don't think I'm going to sell it." I'm like, "That's fine. Doesn't hurt to ask."
Right, of course.
And then I kind of forgot about it. And then about a year ago, that friend from LA was home for Christmas visiting his folks, and he had messaged me. Usually when he comes home every couple of years, and usually like we'll hang out and get a coffee, catch up. So he just texted me. He's like, "Hey man, I'm in town. Um, I brought something for you, and I would love to catch up and just see how you're doing." I'm like, "Oh, cool." And I thought, so he works in movies,
Yeah.
and he always has cool like little
Cool
things.
little trinkets and shit.
I
Yeah.
think it's from movie sets and stuff. So I thought oh, he's gonna give me like something from the Top Gun movie that he worked on. So we're sitting there, we have a good talk for an hour, and then he's like, "Hold on a second." Then he pulls up this duffel bag. He's like, "Open it." And I open it, and it's it's the Moog that I saw sitting on his top shelf. I'm like, oh, if you ever want to sell that. I had not realized that he was the one who had bought the Moog from from this other guy. So he bought the Moog and he traveled across the country and the Moog traveled with him. And I think that Moog's seen a bunch of places in action. And then he just like pushes it across the table and he was like, "Yeah, this is your original Moog, Tommy." And I looked down and it had the broken key and everything. And then he was just like, I don't really play a lot of music anymore. My career's gone in a different direction and um I just felt like it needed to go back home. I was like, "Are you kidding me?" So like this piece of gear that I learned on and was really sentimental to me and I like regretted for like 20 years getting rid of, like made its way back to me because of his generous heart.
Yeah.
And I got like really teared up and gave him a big
I don't
hug.
blame you.
But the funny thing is, for the last 10 years, this Moog needed some work, okay? It's an old instrument from the 80s. It had
Well,
traveled
yeah.
a lot. It
Mhm.
was pretty beat up. It was in rough shape, but it still turned on and it still bleeped and blooped, but it needed some TLC. Well, the last 10 years, I've been working at a place that builds guitar pedals. So it's like the universe timed it right. So it returned its way back to me once I had acquired the skill set that was needed to restore it.
Yeah.
And so my friend was generous and the timing was just right. So I spent a few weeks tracking down parts and restoring it. And then, sort of as an homage of the journey that it went on and the broken key, I had somebody 3D print me the red key.
That's
Um, because I thought that was would be a cool sentimental addition to the story that the synth already held for me.
that's so great, dude.
And so it made its way back to me, and I used it pretty extensively in Synth Rats, and particularly on the Synth Redo album. So um, it's photographed on the back of the IV vinyl as well, but a lot of the leads on that are actually done with an ARP axe
Mhm.
because I hadn't got this synth back. But like once I got the synth back, and I immediately began restoring it and working it into my synth rotation. So now that thing's featured heavily on everything I've been working on for the last year or so.
That's cool.
So I thought that was a really fun story and probably you like sure everybody can kind of tell you about like, oh, I use this certain cool amp or whatever, but that was just a really fun sentimental story that I wanted to tell somebody in your podcast, since we're talking about synth music tonight. I think that would be the time to share that tearjerker.
I'll
Um,
clip it. I'll add it to, just like let
yeah,
people kind of enjoy it. And that's a great story just because, I've always been a huge fan of synths. And you brought up Ronnie Martin from, Joy Electric or Joy Electric. I always get that mixed up with Joy Division. Joy Electric,
yeah,
um, the White Songbook is just
it's
the most
genius.
beautiful, like the album just I get emotional when I hear it just because it's so well done.
Yeah, and so
Uh,
like so to those who are uninitiated, like if you grew up, like if your family was religious or
yep,
whatever,
yep. I
so
was gonna
like
bring up DC Talk too because you brought up DC Talk in one of your interviews. So, but yeah, go.
yeah. So like if you grew up around any of that, like there's a lot of like pretty cringe music and like I would even say like no offense to him, but like there are a couple moments in his career where I'm just like, like
Yeah, ick.
some interesting things going on. But anyway, um, if maybe he took a few missteps here and there, but like overall, that guy has a really solid catalog, and he's so good at analog synthesis and doing all of his sounds from scratch that he's pretty well respected
Mhm.
in the electronic music community. And in particular, White Songbook is just like an absolute masterpiece. And like lyrically, it's very like kind of like Fantasia fantasy. And so, yeah, if anybody listening is just like I've heard of that guy, but I don't know what to listen to because he has a lot of material. And um, that album's just it's almost a prog album.
It is. Yep.
Um, I think it's one of the best albums. that I've had the enjoyment of putting in my headphones or stereo. And
Yeah.
yeah, fanboying out a little bit, but yeah, that he's also a really nice person. And when I was a young kid and socially awkward and
Yes.
um you know he was really patient and answered a lot of
Oh yeah.
questions for me regarding equipment and song structure and stuff. So I'm always just gonna like have a quite a bit of respect for him, and he's consistently like putting out cool art. Like he put out a record about a year or two ago that I thought was like just a great synth pop record.
Which one was it? Was it like one of his solo stuff or was it like
Yeah, it was under the name Ronnie Martin,
that's right.
and
Okay.
it's like a full length that Velvet Blue put out,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like something like The Morning Dew, or
Yeah.
you
Definitely.
know, like
Mhm.
it's more like weird fantasy stuff, and it's freaking awesome.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Like I went through like a whole started listening to a lot of electronic music, craft work and stuff, but you know,
Yeah,
again, I grew up in the very, sort of conservative Christian home and I was kind of at a crossroads where I was leaving because I used to be a drummer for a church and I
okay,
did the pastor's son, his band. I was the drummer, and then I was also the drummer for the youth. And I was kind of at this point where I was seeing it was a mega church. So I
sure,
was going, ugh, I see the kind of the corruption and the greed and this, that, and the other. So I was kind of on my way out. And at
yeah,
the time, I was checking out, other music like electronic and wanting to experiment more with production and just kind of, getting in on the computer and just kind of doing my own thing. And of course, you kind of hold on to those because I mean, I listen to a lot of things from like Tooth and Nail and Solid State.
sure, I do too. Yeah,
Yeah. So coming across Joy Electric was one of those like, you still kind of have that, you can't get away from the church one way or another. It's like part of the mafia. It's like, you can leave, but it's at some point it's going to catch up to you. So anyway, so with the music wise, I listened to a lot of Solid State and Joy Electric, and it was just one of those. And I went through his whole like for Christmas, I was like, my mom's like, "What do you want?" I'm like, "Give me anything Joy Electric." So she loaded up on whatever was on his website, and then we just him and I were kind of emailing each other and would talk and stuff like that. And I've tried to get him on the podcast just to talk music, but he's like, I'm kind of past that now, and I'm like, that's fine. So it's no big deal.
yeah,
But yeah,
yeah. He seems like a really nice person, but
yeah,
he doesn't really like to live in the past, from
mm-hmm,
what I've gathered.
mm-hmm,
Um,
absolutely.
yeah, I kind of like I kind of look at like the that time when I was like a teenager in early 20s, kind of like you have groups of people, and like in um some of them are cool, some of them not so much. Um I don't know, like, but it's a really formative time, and like some of the music from that era is still like really close to me. Like that guy's got a couple records I'm really a huge fan of. And then like his brother, I was on a different podcast where I talked about Starflyer 59.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so his brother's in Starflyer, and like I don't want to rabbit trail too bad here, but anyway,
You're good.
yeah, but both artists I really respect and are still putting out cool art and cool music, and I always appreciated how like approachable. You've got to you have to imagine that somebody who's on like a record label, especially in like the 90s or early 2000s, and especially if they're making really weird music. Like Ronnie Martin made really weird
It was
music.
weird. That
Weird.
first album was odd, and it was real like, um,
But you've
yeah,
got to you've got to imagine that guy just attracted like just the most socially awkward, like homeschooled, like
yeah.
whatever kids.
Oh
And
yeah,
and
absolutely.
he was like so patient and kind.
Yeah,
And so like that just left like a huge that just left a huge like positive impression on me. So
absolutely. Let's get back to your music.
but
I'm
yeah,
sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about your like influences and shit all day. So let's get back on your music, your focus. Let's is there anything else you want to add to synth the synth redo volume 1 where you kind of what other kind of gear were you using at the time? And did it kind of change from, IV to this where you're kind of like, where you kind of switch up the gear a little bit? You know what I mean?
Sure. So Ivy's really more of a guitar record.
Yeah,
There's a
definitely.
bunch of synth on it, but it's really guitar centric.
Yeah, guitar driven, kind of punky in a way.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So it's just like I took away like all the guitar. There's like no guitar on it. It's all just synth. So like the foundational synth, it's like a Juno 106,
Yeah.
the Moog Rogue, and then I have a few like software synths that I use for like some of the string patches or for some of the arpeggiated bass. Um, but a lot of the leads and chords and like main melodies were done on actual like analog, just old school analog synths.
Yeah. And did
But
you, drums wise?
the drums, I found some really cool VSTs of like I used a Lin VST quite a bit, and then a few other ones, and then I built some beats, and then I processed them pretty heavily. Like again, like I love just really trashy, overdriven beats, and I that's sort of one thing that carried over from Ivy to the synth redo is that I still left the drums like pretty saturated.
Cool.
Because I there's just a griminess to it,
Mhm.
and I think the synth redo record is also pretty grimy. Like I liked using saturators on the vocals, and sometimes I'll run like the bass lines. I'll reamp them through like a big muff or something just to give them a little bit of grit,
Oh yeah,
and that's just something I'm really into. Like I love like filthy sounding electronic stuff,
absolutely.
but at the core of it, they're pop songs. There's
Mhm.
a really catchy three-chord chorus, but yeah, I guess I was trying to capture the sort of the spirit and energy of like early Manchester.
That's what I got from it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Hmm. And I was telling Jen Cab because I posted about Jen Cab from
Oh yeah, so good.
Metropolis, and I was promoting your interview, and he was telling me about IV, and he's like, it was a great record. I'm like, I said it was deliciously catchy album. So yeah, I loved it, dude. It was like it's catchy, it's weird, it's like because I had like a whole idea of like synth punk in my head where it was like
Sure.
I'm kind of going with more acoustic drums, and you were kind of adding to that, but then you're adding a little effects to it, and it kind of has that sort of again. I'm not trying to step on anything. It does have that sort of pop punk vibe to it where it's catchy. Like it's like, hey, I can really listen, throw it on, and it's really catchy, and it's not like people are like, what the fuck, like you know what I mean? Like
I
there's
mean, like I'm wearing a Smoking Pups hat. Like it's no secret that I love a good pop song, right?
exactly. Thank you. That's it. Yeah. That's
Yeah, I grew up on stuff like Smoking Popes and
yeah.
Jawbreaker and
Hmm.
the Ramones, and like I think that's pretty obvious. I think it shows up in like my song structures and my vocal melodies. But I also like a lot of like shoegaze stuff or just early post-punk stuff. So sometimes it works against me. Like when I was kind of talking to some labels before like Steadfast had come on board and before Sweet Cheetah came on board. Um, there were people from labels, they'd be like, "Hey, I really like this. This is so good." But I don't think people that buy stuff from my label are necessarily going to be into it or they're not going to know what to do with it because maybe one label put out a lot of bands that
Hmm.
maybe had more of kind of like a pop punk thing going on. And I'm just like, hey, you know your audience and I trust your opinion. And I appreciate the positive and honest feedback. And it means a lot to me that even though this isn't your first genre, that you still really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
And but you told me the truth and you're just like, hey, I don't think my audience is gonna understand it.
I th-
Um,
yeah, I appreciate that kind of honesty because I'll get that a lot with even with the podcast where they're like, I get ghosted so much. I'm like, if you're not into it, tell me that you're just like, oh no, I'm good or whatever. Like, ghost me, don't ignore me, don't
Yeah.
be like, ugh, but like at least come to me and go, you know what? I appreciate it, but not today. You're, we're
Yeah.
busy, or we're doing like I want that honesty. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Steadfast just really made sense. I showed Matt some earlier projects I had done, and he was like, "Yeah, it's pretty cool, man. I dig this or whatever." But I don't think he connected with it really heavily. And then, truthfully, too, like I hadn't really learned how to sing correctly until I started working on Four or Ivy. I started Toilet Rats sort of during when Corona pandemic started, and I just kind of yelled. And then just slowly over time, I would go out a little further of my comfort zone and just try singing. And just through lots of practice, um, I kind of got to the point where like, oh, I'm actually like singing melodies now instead of just like yelling. And there was just at some point like between learning how to sing and then like actually learning how to mix stuff better, I think I kind of found my footing. And right around that time, I sent it to Matt, and he was probably thinking like, Tommy's gonna send me some kind of fun basement recording, yelling stuff again. Like it's cool, but whatever.
Right.
And then he heard that batch of songs, and then he was just like, dude, um, I hope I'm not being too forward here or weird, but I really connected with this material, and if you want to talk more about it, I'd really be interested in helping you release this. Um, and it made sense because Steadfast has a little bit of everything. They've got some like old school hardcore.
Yeah.
They they have some legacy stuff like Appleseed Cast. Um, and then they've got some electronic stuff with Bias Selector, and so it's just really it's just and then like me and Matt are kind of the same age, and it's just like like it just sort of made sense to work with him, and like the way he runs the label ethically, he kind of does it with the Fugazi way, where it's absolute transparency and the artist and the label do an equal amount of work.
Good.
And then for the new record, Sweet Cheetah is co-releasing it with Steadfast. Um, I am rabbit trailing a bit because I've had a really long day, but hey, I'm just gonna roll with it.
No, you're good. No, you're fine. It's totally cool. We're just kind of flowing with it. Like with your recording and songwriting process, do you feel like you just kind of had to work, like just try and find your own comfort zone in a way? And even with like recording where lyrically I mean it's quirky, especially with the with IV, a lot of it's just like conspiracy or ghosts or
Horror
just
movies.
that, yeah, and stuff like that. Did you feel like you were just trying to find, do you see it as like just as a therapy, or just as something just as it's just this is just fun to do kind of thing?
A little bit of each. I don't write a lot of autobiographical material.
Mhm.
I initially just started writing about like real quirky, like old school horror movies and stuff.
Yeah, I love it. Yeah.
Especially sort of like when we were all stuck at home.
Yeah.
A lot of my friends were writing really awesome, but like really emotionally taxing art.
Hmm.
And I loved it, but I was just like, man, between being stuck at home and doom scrolling and everybody just really struggling mentally right now, like I think and like I was really bummed out. Like my brother died um of an overdose around
Mm.
I don't know around the time I started kind of doing this project,
Yeah.
and everything sucked.
Yeah.
Like just the world sucked, life sucked, like the family was painful, like just everything was awful, and I just I'm just like, you know what? I'm just gonna write the dumbest songs I can because I need something to laugh about. I need I need something to do to just not spend every waking moment just filled with like dread.
Yeah.
And so I just started writing like kind of silly stuff. And then my friend Joel from Hemet, California, he was doing a project called Strange Visitors, so we just did a split tape together, and we just kind of encourage each other, and then I'm still in touch with him, but like just over time, I was just getting slowly getting better at crafting songs, but I've always kind of stuck with that theme of um I kind of like I grew up on like really campy horror movies, and I feel like they're good fodder for like punk rock tunes.
Yeah.
Um like I'm working on a new record right now, and I'm not really sure when it's going to come out, and the new record's like there are a few tunes on it that are get away from the campy horror stuff and get a little bit more like autobiographical. I went through kind of a wild medical thing and came out on the other end okay, but it definitely like changed me as a person. Like it made me more tender.
Yeah.
So like I actually did want to talk about. Oh, my little light went out. You can still see
I can
me.
still see you. Yeah, you're perfectly.
Yeah, so I wanted to like talk about that a little bit,
Mhm.
but I don't really want to write like an emo record either. So,
I
but
get that. Yeah.
anyway, what I will do is like at our shows, I'll just tell people like hey, we're all here to have a good time. Everyone's welcome at our shows. And then like when we play Molgoth, usually the drummer and bass player start it and kind of do
Yeah.
the chord progression a few times, and I'll just say like, the song's called Molgoth, and for all the weirdos and misfits and non-normies and people that uh you kind of struggle in the day to day at your jobs and stuff. Like tonight's your night.
Yeah.
This is your space tonight. And it's really fun. So even though it's like we don't have like a big political message or anything, I still wouldn't call it escapist because I do really make an effort to um create an environment where people know that like somebody in the room cares about them and that we're here to have some fun together.
Yeah.
It's less escapist and it's more like hold each other up.
Yeah.
And
Perfect.
it's really important to us to like I don't know, like we wouldn't be playing a show if people didn't show up. So I don't look at it like I'm on stage entertaining you. Looking at it more like, hey, there's 50 of us in this room and we're all here for each other tonight.
Yeah. When you put together the record, were you going in a certain sequence or were you just kind of feeling it out where it's like, okay, this sounds good with this and that and the other?
No, I usually sequence everything after. I tend to write prolifically and I'll have like 20 songs and then I'll kind of pare it down to like my favorite
Mm.
10 to 12. And then once I have it kind of pared down, because like sometimes maybe I'll have like three or four songs that I'll kind of follow the same pattern or sound too much alike. So then I'll just sort of I'll weed a few out.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, once I got the songs that I like, then I try to sequence it and
Yeah.
see like what feels good flowing from one song to another.
Right. That makes sense. What is your go-to like gear? Are you strictly like piano or guitar? Where do you usually start off at?
Um, Typically I'll start writing a song on like the bass.
Oh, okay.
Because
Wow.
yeah, I'll pick up the bass, I'll just be do 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 do, and I'll kind of come up with, like it's not like I write these super wild bass lines, but
Yeah.
my guitar parts I kind of treat them more like texture and filling
Mm-hmm.
rather than like I don't I'm not a shredder, so to me like a good rhythm foundation
Mm-hmm.
is where I'll start, and then I'll do some rhythm guitars, and then I'll throw it in some headphones, and I'll like listen to it at work or when I'm out for a jog or a walk or whatever, and start to come up with melodies. And so once I kind of have a ballpark idea of what the vocals are going to be like, then I start to fill in the additional keyboards and guitars because I need to know like where to not have something fighting with the vocals,
Mm-hmm.
and I might need like a synth lead to kind of help with the transition.
Right. That
Yeah.
makes um Jesus, I had something there and then I totally lost it. So when you're oh yeah, gear. I'm sorry. I just lost it. Tell me about how like your gear has kind of are you starting to buy more gear with each album? I know you said you like repair, pedals and stuff. Have you kind of been experimenting more with extra pedals as each album kind of comes out? Like tell me more about the the geek side and the gear side of everything.
Totally. You know what? I'm actually trying to not be a gear hoarder, so I've actually gone the other direction where I have three or four pedals that are kind of my mainstays.
Hmm.
My main fuzz slash distortion is a Frantone Peach Fuzz, and
Yeah.
it's this pedal from the 90s that sounds pretty unique and is nice and thick and warm. So that's kind of like my main fuzz. And then when I need to do like super nuclear fuzz,
Hmm.
let's see if I have it sitting here.
Yeah, yeah.
I do. This is called the Res Dog.
Oh, wow, yeah.
So a friend of mine who lives in Montana, he's got a little company called Minor Glitch.
Ooh,
He's an indigenous guy,
yeah.
and he collects shotgun shells off the reservation and
Oh,
turns them into knobs.
that's
But
cool.
he hand builds all these in small batches.
That's
And,
neat.
a couple times a year he'll drop like a batch of five or six, and it's just like the most nuclear treble, like destroy your eardrums fuzz I've ever heard. And so I use that on like Sensory Overload and a few other songs where like this really brutal like trebly fuzz comes in. That's that pedal. So if you want to look him up, it's Miner Minor Glitch, and he has Instagram and stuff.
Hmm.
Um, I do try to buy things from small builders who are
I'm the
making
same way
cool
too.
stuff.
Yeah. Hmm. That's
Um, so I use that one a lot, the Frantone, and then for delays, typically on recordings, I'll use like replica, which is like a Native Instruments delay, because I like to be able to sync the delay really tight with the beat.
yeah.
But then like live, I just kind of use a basic like Boss DD6.
There you go.
It's kind of a classic. They never break. So
Tell me about your live. Let's go ahead and shift to live, playing live. Tell me about your live setup and kind of what you do and
sure.
set everything up and kind of do, laptops, like kind of how do you usually go about it?
No laptops or computers or this so there's two versions of the band.
Hmm. Yeah, you were
At
telling
the
me.
rock show,
Hmm.
I'm usually singing and playing guitar. Usually it's like a five piece. There's this other guy named Trevor, and if he's home from tour,
Hmm.
sometimes we'll do six piece and I'll just sing.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, a couple guitars. Zach Baker, who's a really well known like regional like piano guy. He plays synthesizer. My friend Stefan plays guitar. Enrique Ibanez on the bass, and then the drummers. It's usually Kevin Goff or Cam Bartlett. Occasionally Cody. Once or twice a year, this dude named Eric Bear. Um, it's kind of funny, like drummers who are good get a lot of work.
Yeah, of
So sometimes we rotate the drummers a little bit depending who's available.
course. Yeah.
And it's just a rock band. We don't really use tracks or anything. Like we did at first, and to me, it was just kind of like taken away from the vibe because like if I have a really good crowd and I kind of have this energy with them, um, I like to be able like to bring the song down and get it kind of quiet. And I'm like walking around in the crowd with a megaphone and stuff. It's kind of hard to do that with a track.
Yeah.
Um, I really like to like feed off the energy of the room. But I know like when we play live, like the drummers they'll use like a click track just to keep the band tight.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've just shied away from having like laptops and a lot of that stuff on stage.
I get it. You got, I mean, while we're talking, you got a couple shows coming up.
Yeah.
We are currently at coming up on April, and I
Yeah.
totally lost my. Let me go ahead and kind of bring those out while we're talking about it. April 10th,
Yeah.
the Zara Darling
Yes.
MPLS album release with Immortal Girlfriend is at Lazenlow. Am I saying that
There's,
right?
there's a slight change to that show. So Immortal Girlfriend, the incredible synthwave band from Milwaukee, but they had to cancel their tour due to some medical reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So that shows it's now us Lazenlow. Lazenlow is like a really cool like trip hop, kind of like Massive Attack or Bjork or something like that. They're really good. So they're playing, and then um, a power pop group, Paul Serrar. It's the lead singer's name, but it's like really cool power pop. It kind of reminds me of like old school Cheap Trick mixed with like Lookout era Green Day.
Yeah.
Really good stuff. So they're playing. That's the Minneapolis show, and then that's for the. So the next two shows, they're release shows for the synth album.
Yeah.
So for that show, it's like we're gonna have like my electronic tracks, and then keyboard player. Steph is gonna do some kind of like icy guitar, and then Kara, who's the lead singer of the synth pop group called Enemy in the Sky,
Weird.
she's gonna be up on stage with us too. So we're gonna have like co-ed vocals, and then and that's in Minneapolis, and then in Rochester, which is like an hour and a half south of Minneapolis, it's gonna be Toilet Rats, Enemy in the Sky, and Danger Club, and that's gonna be more of that show's a bit more electronic based.
Is that the May 31st?
No, that one's
April
April.
19th? Okay.
That one's April 18th.
Okay, cool.
We've been adding shows, and then the following day, April 19th, we're doing like this big like synth show in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And I'm super tired, so I don't have the lineup memorized because it's been the longest day of the universe.
I'll let
Um,
you go here in a bit, but keep going.
no, I'm not complaining.
No, you're good.
I'm having a good time, but I am rambling. And if you're still listening to me, bless your soul. And then yeah, so like April's all about just like synth shows, okay? So like
Yeah,
if you want it, the synth stuff come out in April, and then if you want the full band, um, we're doing this, like we're doing a couple other things. We got a full band show like late April with Brendan Kelly from the Lawrence Arms and Tightwire
cool.
and Couch Potato Massacre, and then there's and we're doing a festival at the end of May.
Yeah, I saw that one. You sent that as your part of the Beers with Bands Fest 2. It's an
Yeah.
underground music cafe with supportive parents. Yeah, I'll probably try and add like a link or whatever for tickets if anybody wants to go to that festival.
Yeah, it's this is the part of the podcast where you got you got to watch me try to memorize all the show details and stumble a bit, but that's okay.
Yeah,
We're
that's
having fun.
you told me let's talk about black cats.
Hmm.
Go ahead. Let's talk about black cats.
Um, we have two black cats, Audrey and Ramona,
Yeah,
and we adopted them together. They're sisters, and black cats get adopted the least.
the least. Yep, that's what I heard.
And you'll hear that from veterinarians, from shelter workers and stuff. So if you're considering getting a cat, maybe consider a black cat. They're super fun. They have really good personalities or catalities, maybe will be the correct. I did hear something really cool though. You know that movie Flow?
Whoa, I have it in my notes. Go ahead. You bring it up. So go for it.
Yeah, it's this beautiful like
Yeah,
animated movie of just
so
kind
good.
of follows this little cat around kind of after humans are gone and the earth is trying to heal. So all these animals befriend each other. But the main star of that film, it's a black cat, and it's a really popular movie. And so there's information going around now that because of the popularity of that movie, a lot more people are adopting black cats. So that movie is actually like helping get some of these cats out of the shelters, which
Yep.
is really, really cool.
Yeah, I think it's fantastic because I had an ex. She had a black cat, and she was like, "Well, people wouldn't want to, they don't like adopt him because they think they're bad luck." And I'm like, "No, obviously not." But some people are so ridiculously superstitious that they're like, "Oh, I want to." So I'm very pro black cat in every.
Yeah, I think some of it's superstition, and then unfortunately, like there's other shallow stuff. Like some people are like, oh, they don't photograph that well, so some people are kind of worried about not having as good of content because, which is just silly. It's just like, no, you just have to get better at using your camera or
Yeah.
get the dude. I've got like hundreds of pictures of my cats, and I'm biased, but they're the cutest cats ever, and the photos of them are great, and I'm always showing them to my friend. Whenever I meet a new person, I always show them photos of my cats.
Yep. Of course, yeah. It's like the thing where it's like, hey, I got animals or I got kids, and it's just like, hey, here they are, and
Yeah.
cats are the coolest. I'm very pro cat. I love dogs. Don't get me wrong. I love all animals, but I was always a cat person. I had a Russian blue cat. It was
Okay.
gray. We called her Pepper, and dude, she lived so long, but she got, progressively got older and just kind of where, got skinny and stuff. And she was getting older, when I finally moved out of my parents' house. And then, yeah, she just started getting old and was just like, all right, well, she can't really make it up the stairs anymore. So we're going to have to go take her. And I was just like, oh, so yeah, it was just one of those sad things. I absolutely loved Pepper. I'm very pro cat for sure. So
I love cats. I love dogs. I think they're both totally awesome, just kind of for different reasons.
yeah.
We live in a pretty small house and we're in the city and my schedule's a little bit nutty and at this point in life, I don't think it would be fair to a dog for me to get a dog.
Same.
I'm a firm believer in if you bring a pet home, you want to give that pet a really good life, the best life you can.
Yeah.
And so like, maybe in 5 years or something, and I've settled down a little bit and I'm not running around constantly, that might be a good time to do that. But both our cats are indoor cats, and my wife does work from home, and then when I come home, I'll play with them. So like the cats are constantly getting enrichment and attention, and that they're just kind of perfect for us. But yeah, like maybe when I'm a little bit older and just more chill, I do like the idea of like bringing a dog around too. But we'll see when that time comes. But yeah, to me, it's not a competition, but I think the cats are just like a really, really good fit for our family.
I think it's great. I'm gonna kind of gear it towards music, and then we'll go ahead and call it.
Oh yeah, totally.
Oh, you're good. Tell me about the scene out in Minneapolis. I mean, I talk about the scene out here in St. Louis. It kind of comes and goes depending on what genre. Tell me what it's like out there in Minneapolis.
Um, Minneapolis is hopping, and there's a lot of genres. What's really cool about Minneapolis, so like Minneapolis is kind of like famous for like Prince and the Replacements and Husker Du. But and then there's also a lot of young bands. But what's really cool here is anywhere from like the age of like high school to like people in their 60s go to indie shows and are in bands. And I love that because there isn't this thing in Minneapolis where it's like, oh, once you turn a certain age, you have to like grow up and sell your equipment. It's respected here, where
Yeah.
it's like, hey, I might, I have friends who are lawyers, and then but they're in a garage band on the weekend because it's what they love to do. I
Yeah.
think it's so cool.
So cool.
Um, but yeah, there's just like a billion bands here and a lot of genres, and it's a pretty small town, so I feel like there's a fair amount of cross-pollination. It's not uncommon to see like a hardcore band with like chugga breakdowns playing with like a poppy indie band. I think here people are more um I think there's a lot of attention placed on people who are just sort of like trying to do good by the community, like um people who are sharing like DIY ethics and putting on shows and especially like all age shows and stuff.
Mhm.
I think pretty much anybody who just sort of fits under that umbrella, they'll just play together. So it is really cool. It's really fun seeing like really heavy bands play with an electronic band or a singer-songwriter. Um, there's so many bands I can't even like keep track of them. Right now there's a lot of like really killer shoegaze bands. If I were to name a couple, like so there's a band from here called She's Green.
Mhm.
They're starting to really blow up. I think they're currently on tour with Glixen.
Ooh.
Yeah, so She's Green, like if you're kind of into like slow dive or
Mhm.
medicine or kind of some of that dreamy stuff, you'll dig them. There's a really good band from here called Another Heaven, and they're super heavy, but they're also gorgeous. I would describe them as like the Melvins covering the Cure.
Oh, that's cool.
It's just like they just have the heaviest, like they'll hit a low note and you just feel it like.
Feel it in your chest.
Feel it. They use giant amps, but they have them dialed in, so like even though they're loud, it's not like ear piercing. It's
Yeah,
just you just feel it,
feel in
and
your body. Yeah,
so they're really heavy, but they're super melodic and crushingly beautiful and kind of emotionally heavy. But like it doesn't feel right calling them shoot. They call themselves doom gaze, which I suppose.
okay, I get, yeah, that
Yeah,
makes
yeah.
sense.
Um, Gosh, there's just so many cool. There's a band called Gully Boys from here,
Mhm.
kind of like they're like a really cool poppy grungy band, and I don't know, they're just rad. Like these four gals just like tearing it up and writing the catchiest songs ever. And I'm like have my fingers crossed for them to blow up
Yeah,
and get to a higher level because I just think they have everything that could get them there, like as far as songs and just their overall vibe and their aesthetic and I don't know, just a really cool band. Um, I don't know. There's so many bands from Minneapolis. Like any night of the week, I feel like there's 10 shows going on. So in some ways, it's really cool because
but
there's always a good band to see.
yeah,
But in other ways, it's hard because, like when you're playing a show, you're like, oh,
I'm missing out.
well, it's not so much missing out. It's more like we're gonna get to play a cool show tonight, but when I'm playing this cool show, like a really good friend of mine's playing across town, so I can't go watch their band. Like it's less fear of missing out, and it's more like, oh man, I don't want to compete with my buddy.
No, I
Uh,
get.
but yeah, Minneapolis is just in a really good place right now, for local music, and it's really fun for me. I'm sort of entering a phase in life where I'm kind of getting to produce some bands and mentor a little bit and stuff. And I'm seeing all these like young bands with like these huge amps and awesome songs. Just, just, I can't keep up with how many there are, and it makes me really happy. I feel like we've come back to this place where there's like a lot of momentum, a lot of talent, and a
Mhm.
lot of new people, and it's really exciting.
That's cool. Yeah, that's I've been trying to really push a lot of Midwest. I mean, it's you get East Coast, West Coast, things are pretty good down south in Texas and stuff, but Midwest it's a give or take kind of thing. So that's why I've been trying to get more, Midwest. And I really appreciate you coming on, dude. This is the coolest. You were on my list that you hit me up and then you text me. I was like, hey, it's Tommy Ratz. Like I was like, yes. So I was like, I'm so excited to have you on and promote your music. And I really appreciate you taking the time and everything.
One more quick thing. I think you and I were talking about a band called Unstable Shapes.
Yes, yes, yeah. They emailed me. I emailed them back. I'm waiting to hear them back and see what because I'm pretty much open in August at this point. So, but yeah, they sent me I think the latest album.
Yeah, that just came out.
Yeah. So they're
That's that's a really good band.
amazing band. I listened to them today when I was at work, and I was just so blown away and so talented, so good. I can't wait to talk with them, dude. That's so
Really,
cool.
really good people. We just had the privilege of playing with them a couple weeks ago, and it was awesome. I mean, they're everybody in that band has like really serious chops, and Andrew's lyrics are incredible, and Andrew's stage presence is very commanding. So it's like when you're on a bill with that band, you got to kind of step up your game
Step
a
it
bit.
up, yeah, dude. I get that.
Very good band.
That's awesome, dude. Usually I end the podcast. If you have anybody who looks up to your music, anybody who's looking to be a musician or an artist, what piece of advice do you have for them?
When I was younger, I feel like there was a lot of emphasis on like getting out there and trying to get signed, and there was like a lot of like band competition and sometimes drama between bands. And I'm just at a really different place in life now, and maybe some of that some clarity after going through some like medical scary stuff. But I just want to make fun music and meet cool people, and then if people actually like made the effort to leave their house and pay $5 or $10 and get in the venue and and hang out. I just want to make sure everybody there feels welcome and that they're having a good time. Like that's just kind of what I'm at now. So like just be welcoming, be nice to people, hang out at the merch table and actually talk to people, watch the other band's sets, and I don't know, like if you have a dream and like want to make it or whatever, that's cool. I don't want to like poo-poo anybody's goals, but um, you know, if you get to plug in your instruments and people come out to hear it, like that's really like something special and it's a privilege and an honor and even if you're doing it in front of 10 people, just like do your best and hang out with people and let people know that you love them and you might be someone's lifeline that got them out of the house that night and it's really um a special like position to be in and like don't treat it lightly and I don't know. But with all that seriousness, also like have fun,
Absolutely.
good
Oh,
time.
I agree 100%. Spot on. No, spot on. It's a beautiful thing. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on my podcast, dude. You were the coolest, baddest dude. Hit me up if you need anything. You know what's up. If you got
And
any more artists, please send them my way. I'll go ahead and promote them all over the social media. But thank you so much, man. I really appreciate your time.
thank you, man. Like, it's really a treat to be on and just have a conversation with you. I had a good time. I gotta quit apologizing, but yeah, I'm feeling a bit rambly and free flowing tonight, but I had a good time and yeah, just stay in touch. It goes both ways. If you're ever in the Twin Cities and you want to get some pizza or tacos or whatever,
It,
I'm your guy.
it sounds great, man. All right. Thank you so much, man.
Cheers.
Easy, buddy.